So in this video I want to make a video on like the video. In this video I want to make a subject on context again, and how context, not like just beginning and end, and relativity, how you feel based on your relative position of comfort and your sentience, and how you're feeling, how you don't really realize how bad or good you have. It's sort of like how long things have gone since it still exists means it's a good thing. In many cases, you don't know what it's like because you're the one existing and you're existing in the exact same way. Therefore, you don't really realize the full context of how things were existing in the past and how they existed now. Sort of like you've existed so long this way, you don't even realize because it's a very slight, but not necessarily slight, but a very sneaky kind of um, deprivation you have. You don't realize how deprivated you are when you're you haven't eaten in a while. Sometimes you don't realize how hungry you are because you're distracted with something else. You don't realize how um, how much sexual gratification you still have you haven't satisfied. Either be a distraction or you don't realize it because it's being built up in you until you satisfy it. Sometimes it takes the satisfaction because you're so used to it, and sometimes it takes building up that satisfaction enough for you to realize it, or sometimes it takes more context. And many in the context in the situation is um, a relative position and knowing exactly how much or how little um, it takes. What I really mean is it's you don't realize how bad or good you have it because you've experienced so much of it. So sometimes you don't realize how bad so you don't realize how bad you have it until you no longer have the problem you're experiencing. So once the problem is gone, you don't realize how bad it was. You maybe say at the beginning you knew how bad the problem was, but through experience or through just existing that way for so long, you've lost those negative feelings or whatever it is. But the feelings were still there. These became your default sensibilities or your default state of existence, and all that you felt. Now that you've now that it's gone away, you realize just how relieving it is. You don't realize it sometimes because it's become so regular. Once it's become so regular, you don't realize just how good things can be. And the same thing can go for bad. You don't realize how bad things could be because you've had it kind of easy for the last while, and then things get bad again, and all of a sudden you realize how bad things can get, and vice versa can work for either good or bad. It's just depends on your relative's position, or if you're in how negative you are, how positive you are. Sometimes it takes one hell of a thing to realize just how um, bad it can be, and so on and so forth, and how good it can be. Sometimes it takes one hell of a long time of a negative sensation to realize just how good things can be without that sensation being a weight on your shoulders. And the same thing can be good for the bad. You can be good for so long, and all of a sudden one hell of a bad thing happens, and all of a sudden you realize just how bad things can get. And that's life. It's either choosing to be in the middle or choosing the extremes. Not necessarily you choosing them, but those are the choices that are given to us based on our existence. And something we're sort of we're stuck in the middle somewhere, kind of, and something we're kind of stuck in. So yeah, so you don't realize how bad it is, or even how good it is, until the effect it has on you until it stops or it goes away or something changes. The relative position changes either for the better or good, and all of a sudden you realize how good or bad it could be, um, based on whatever variable you want to add time. Um, Usually it does come down to time, like I mentioned before. Context, means more of it. It's happened once or it hasn't happened in a long time. The context, emotions can be involved as well because the emotions are part of the experience. Because emotions automatically come with the experience of sentience, so it's something that comes along with it. So yes. Um, so that's easy subject, something very simple, something we can all kind of understand and relate to in many circumstances. We've all had a good day, we've all had a bad day, but we may not have all the same good or bad day, but we've had a worse day and we've had a best day. And that's a good way to think about it. We've had a good day and a best day, and we can look at that relationship. Even though we haven't been all the way over here, there's still plenty of space on both sides of the good and bad. We can both that you may say hypothetically be able to feel, it doesn't mean that you still haven't had a best and a worst day. And that's a relative context in which you can at least compare, at least in your own personal life, how things have working out for you, right? So it's one of those things, regardless of how bad or good it is, there's a relative position, at least in your own personal existence, in which you can make the comparison. And you can realize just how good the good is and how bad the bad is. And you can make that relative comparison and see how much they compare and how much that good that felt, and how you make that comparison, at least in your head, how good the good is compared to how bad the bad is, and comparing the extremes, the best and the worst, and going from the best to the worst. And the best, it takes a much better best. So if you had it the best, there's only more room to, like I mentioned before, to get the worst, and there's only more room to fall. And there's more room to fall. Therefore, the higher you go, you're just setting yourself up for a trap. And I think that's in, the trap I've mentioned before. The good feelings are a trap, to get you to feel good, to get the satisfaction, to feel good, to feel bad again. And there's only more room for you to fall. There's only more falling space, and there's only more room for you to fall. You're losing space. It's easier and easier, but it's also a further fall the higher you get. So that's the X and Y axis, I guess you can say, in terms of making a graph out of it. You're getting more and more space, and you're losing more and more space. You're reaching the threshold, at least from your own personal past experience, and knowing the context between your good and bad, at least in your own personal experience. But it's also, you're creating a thinner platform you're standing on, or a smaller platform, and it's as it's getting thinner, it's raising too, so you're falling further. If that's any way to analogize the distinctions, or to analogize the feelings we get and how they can be compared and all that good stuff. Or bad stuff. It depends on how you want to look at it, right? It's all subjective. It's all relative. It's all relative. But not really, because that's relative to my previous opinion. So, yes, I think that's all I want to say. Until next time, I suppose. It takes context, and the context, obviously, is based on your personal experience and knowledge and intellect to a certain extent. So thank you, and until next time, bye.